Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with writer and teacher Cyndee Dhalai. She has had many roles in her life. If you have ever known rejection from very young in life, isolation from family because you didn't fit into their mold or thought differently, if you've known ostracism from everyone because you chose to be you, if you've been disowned for marrying your own choice, if you've known starting from -0 to build a life and family, if you've known losing 4 years of your life in a fog of severe illness, flatlined a few times, defied all the odds as you're deadly allergic to all medications, and to readjust to life in a wheelchair for over 11 years. And that story goes on and on. This is a story of grit and evolution. This is who she is. We get into quite a story, a journey. Enjoy this interview. Well, hey, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
It's nice of you to have me on your show.
Absolutely. So let's begin. Before we get into your life as a writer, I want to begin with the first question here. 5 years ago, COVID was doing so many things, changing our lives. How did you make it through the pandemic, and how has it influenced your writing and your work today?
I think most of our experiences in life do have a certain impact on us. And in my case, it was like a lot of things happened at the same time. And it did take a lot to get to where I am right now. But my whole life, I guess, all the things I've been through have been kind of giving me a foundation on which to build on right now. So the experiences I've had over the last 5 years, well, it's been loss, rejection, grief, learning to live by myself, be self-reliant. And my writing is just how I actually talk to myself, because it's something I've always done in my mind, basically. I never really put it on paper until about 3 years ago.
So you've had many roles, as I have read in your biography. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day at a school, and one of the kids was curious and was like, hey, what do you do for a living? How would you explain your career up to this point?
Teaching. I've always been a teacher. I guess I'm always a teacher, even though I'm not actively involved in teaching right now, like in a realistic, practical sense of the word. But I was a teacher for over 26 years. And I think that has always been my role, teacher counselor, because I always seem to find myself in the role of being like a confidant and a support and like an advisor to people across many spectrums. I'm not just talking young people or students that I speak to. I mean, friends and people who have problems. I always seem to be the one who everybody would turn to advice. And in a strange way, my advice always seems to work.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were 12 years old, what was your dream job?
An archaeologist and world explorer. Definitely different from what it turned out to be.
So let me ask you this. As a writer, what were some books early on? Who were writers that inspired you, that made you want to write?
Would you believe horrors? Stephen King, Dean Koontz. I love horrors. Actually, the genre that I read the most is horrors, or like Dan Brown. And I love his books, and Joe Baldacci and people like that, who to talk about this kind of outer worldly kind of thing. But I love poetry, because when I was 11, when I started high school, there was this poem, If by Rudyard Kipling. And that poem just spun my head, because I said, you can say so much with so few words. Because sometimes when you read a book, after one chapter, you forget what you read before. But with poetry, you can put all these thoughts in just so few lines, and you get the full impact of it. And my mind just took off. And I don't know what it was, but I would write poetry in my head, because I do it all the time. But I mostly write to myself, not to like anybody else or whatever. I did write a few times in my life, on paper, but I never really actually wrote poetry on paper until 2022.
So let me ask you this. What was the first thing that you wrote that you showed somebody and got a response that was positive or favorable that made you feel like you found your calling? You found what you need to do with your life?
But do you believe a poem called Focus?
Wow.
Because I was asked by someone to focus on a question. And they said, Cyndee, just write me exactly what comes to mind. And when I sat down and I wrote, the poem Focus came out. And that's where it started. And it said something like this. Just now I'll tell you.
So who's been kind of your hero? Who's been your inspirational force in life?
Um, I've had different ones over the years. Like my focus or the person that I've turned to is God, because that's the person I've been talking to my head in my mind all the time, basically. Because my life has been full of a lot of experiences growing up, and I kind of got isolated earlier on because of the background I grew up in, and I didn't exactly fit into like a traditional religious background because I thought outside the box, and I had a very bad habit of always speaking my mind. So you kind of learn to speak to yourself, and that's when I started. I just would speak to myself and I would talk to God. And then later on, my inspiration was like what I read because I love reading and I love like every time I encountered something, I would read. And well, my name is Cyndee Dhalai, and the Dalai Lama, we have basically the same last name. And I love reading like the Dalai Lama work and stuff like that. And but I love to read everything, everything that has depth in it, not just, fiction or some things like that, but I was always more drawn to things that made me think. And that was my inspiration. And then, like I said, I love horrors and I love Stephen King's writing. And then my inspiration in the last few years was a very, very close friend of mine.
So let me ask you this. If you could meet one writer, whether they're alive or not, and you could watch how they create, spend a little time with them, ask some questions, who would be a dream author you would love to meet?
Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
He came to mind. I don't know why. I just because I was thinking I was gonna. I mean, the obvious choice would have been Stephen King, but because I love his books, but Deepak Chopra came to mind.
So what motivates you to get up every day to do this work, to write, to take care of your soul, and to feel like you're doing the best work possible? What is that for you every day?
Life is to be enjoyed, and the thing is, regardless of what I've been through or what I'm going through right now, it's a to me it's a gift to actually get up because technically, medically, I'm not supposed to be here.
So let me ask you this: if you were to have a dream tonight and run into a much younger version of you, let's say a 18-year-old version of you ready to charge out into the world to write and to teach, what advice would you give that young version of you?
Keep going and start writing earlier.
Hmm. Mhm. So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that has known you as a teacher or knows you as a writer, and you could tell that room of people a really fun story about you, maybe the first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, something you overcame, some fun story, what story would you tell that room of people?
I would tell him about the one that I climbed up on a scaffolding to get balloons from my first year class.
Yeah. So to get where we want to get in life, it requires risk. What's the biggest risk that you've taken in life?
Actually writing and publishing the book and reaching out now to publishers who take on it unagented books and stuff like that, because to me that's the biggest risk. Because I don't know anybody in the writing industry. And
Yeah.
even though I am a member of the Hay House Writers community, I mean, where I live and the circle I have, nobody really knows about writing and the writing industry and the publishing world and stuff like that. And I always believed that the publishing world was it. You sent in a book and, you send it to the company or whatever. But then I realized that there was so much involved and you had to either get an agent or you had to do certain things and stuff. And that took a lot for me to actually step forward and start doing that. And I actually started doing that.
The one thing about writing a book is that, you're dispensing all of this knowledge about your life and the way you see it. And it's a journey. And when you walk into that, you're not expecting that you may learn something about yourself that you didn't realize. What did you learn about yourself through the process of writing the book? What did you not realize before that maybe you understood through the process of writing the book?
That I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was, and that there are some things that I thought I I had managed, but I didn't actually, I just had pushed it aside, and that I needed to learn a lot more about who I really was, because a lot of questions came up in the course of writing. And I'm not just talking about the book Grief is the Price You Pay for Love, which I have published. That taught me a lot about grief and about the fact that you can't bury memories. And even though you think you have resolved something and that you are moving forward and you're creating space around your grief, you realize that maybe that isn't really what I have done. That what I've done is that I've put it in like hold, and I need to see things in a lot broader scope. And then I wrote a new book called, well, I haven't published it, it's still a manuscript. It's called Who Am I? I Am Lost, and My Soul Answered, Look Within. And that one was deep for me because all these things arose from my experience over the past 5 years about, who am I really? And like, what am I doing? And about the various questions that we ask ourselves about our life and our purpose and things like that. And I realized that there was a lot that I really didn't know, that I needed to like stop for a minute and just look at me, not at what people think about me or what other people say or what is expected or what I'm supposed to do or what whoever the D is in the world that dictate our emotions and our actions. I had to stop for a minute and look back at me and said, okay, Cyndee, what it is you really want to do now. I mean, what is your next step? Who are you really? What do you carry in you?
So, of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Excuse?
Of everything that you've done in your life up to this point, of everything you've evolved to, everything you've accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
The fact that I can move forward and I can do something that I thought was almost impossible for me to do, which is to write and to actually step out of where I am right now or where I thought I was, and to take a chance on or it's really a big risk, really, of publishing my books and speaking out to people. And even talking to you is a big risk for me, and it's a chance. And to
So,
let go of fear.
yeah. So, let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, all of the readers, everyone that you know, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am a very unique person, and I am more and I'm never less, and stronger than I thought I was. I know I'm stubborn and independent, and I guess we can list all our values and beliefs and stuff like that, but to me is that I can only be who I am, and that evolves, and sometimes that changes every single day. But I've always been not the roles I've played, because we all play a lot of roles in life, but I've always seen myself or held myself to be someone who is supportive and giving and loving and compassionate. And yes, I do judge sometimes. And yes, I am stubborn and kind of set in my ways in certain aspects of my life. But I think I am a work in progress.
So if anyone wants to delve into your writing, they want to reach out, they have questions, they're curious, any of the good business, where do they go?
Well, my books are available on Amazon.com because I wrote both a poetry book called Pieces of Me Touch My Soul by Cyndee, and I also wrote my book, which is Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. Run into the Fire, Discover Me in the Ashes by Faye Allian. That's my pseudonym. And both are available on Amazon.com. And I also have like Faye Allian. There was a website set up called fayeallian.com, which is the author's website.
Excellent. Cyndee, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time, your courage, your evolution. I really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.